I welcome you in lecture 16 regarding legal compliance for incorporating startup, and I am discussing the module regarding financing and legal compliance. This is a last module in the course, and this talk is related to how to capitalize a business. Now, I believe you remember the business form which I have discussed with you in the beginning of this particular course, and then I have talked with you how to incorporate this particular business form. So, some of the business forms are to incorporate, and some of them are need to register, and we have discussed in detail while we are talking about this forming of the business form. Now, in the and during that particular point of time also, I have also told you that how in generally these particular business forms are financed themselves. Now, what I did, I had put it into a tabular form, that which are the fund this particular business form can access. Now, what I will do first, I am going to discuss the upper heading or upper row, where I have mentioned the different name or different form of the fund, and then I am going to take you through each of these particular business form which can access what kind of fund. Now, the first column in the first row is talking about the financing by the promoter, members or the sponsor. That means, in these circumstances, whoever basically either incorporating or registering or promoting these particular business form, they themselves bring the fund. So, you in case of the companies, we generally talk about the promoter. In case of society cooperatives, we generally talk about the members, and then in case of the farm also we talk about the members, and then when you talk about the sponsor, it is basically we indicate trust, when the trust has been incorporated for running the business. Now, please remember, when you are talking about that these people can bring the fund, they can bring any kind of fund into the business. That means, they can bring the fund which are of a capital in nature, or they can even give the credit to this particular business firm. Now, what are the instrument they are going to use for giving these particular either capital contribution in the capital, or they will bring these debt fund or the credit to this particular organization, depend on type of organization they are basically promoting. So, in case of the partnership fund, it is partnership firm, it is basically they brings kind of a money to this particular firm, or they can even extend the loan to this particular partnership firm. Similarly, in case of the company, they can bring the capital fund in form of equity, and they can also bring the debt fund in form of bonds and debenture. So, whatever the business form is, they can bring the different kind of instrument for that particular business form. Now, the second one is the government grants. Now, which I have discussed with you other day when I was talking about incorporating the startup. The government basically promotes the different kind of startup, because please remember, startups are generally form a part of MSME, and government are interested to promote this particular MSME for different reason, maybe for the local market liquidity or local market supply, or even the employment generation, or even to promote a particular industry in a form of MSME. So, whatever it may, government generally gives the a grant many of the time, and these particular grants are one time grant. That means, you get this particular grant, but you need not need to pay back to the government. Like if you are upgrading your machineries, then in that case you might get a one time grant. Similarly, you might also get the grant in form of equity, you might get the grant in form of a credit, or you might get a grant in form of a credit without interest. So, there is a many scheme you will find that runs by the government, and these particular fund are available with the different layer of the government. That means, it might be with local government, it might be with state government, or it might be with the central government. So, whatever the government you are basically approaching, they have a earmark fund, and they also specify that what circumstances they will release this particular fund. So, you might access this particular fund too. Now, there is a private equity and the venture capital, and in my subsequent lecture I am going to deal with it in detail, but let me tell you, these people also make an investment in high risks and high growth oriented venture. Now, in generally these particular ventures are look for more a formal business form, because then in that case it is easy for them to fund, as well as there is a kind of a regulatory prescriptions are there for this particular organization to whom they can fund and how much they can fund and in what form they can fund. So, that is the reason you will find they generally do not go for the informal sector, but they generally go for a formal business form. So, there is only in case of the company which I am going to talk with you are these particular funds available. Now, next category is a bank and specialized financial institutions, and you will find now the government is pushing different commercial bank as well as different scheduled bank, different industrial bank, which I am going to discuss with you a little later, or even the different specialized financial institutions which are created for a particular sector itself to facilitate the startup, or to create a startup fund, or create a SME fund, MSME fund, so that these particular organization can grow. Now, please remember, while they are creating this kind of fund, they are creating it a lot of ease in accessing this particular fund. Previously, it was very difficult to get a credit for the purpose of the startup or MSMEs, but nowadays you will find the bank has created a dedicated branch, and they have certain kind of a prescriptions which you have met those particular prescription, you might quickly access this particular fund. Now, bank also given a lot of mandate that in which form they can make an investment in this particular business, either in form of a equity or in form of a debt. So, whatever the prescription is, they need to make that particular investment, but at the same time these particular the granting of the loan is not always standardized, but it can be also customized. So, there can be a negotiation done between this particular startup as well as the bank, and in some cases if they found that well this particular startup has a potential to go up or grow, then in that case there can be some kind of a leniency provided by this particular bank while they are lending the money. Now, the next one is a public financial institution. Now, public financial institution is basically earmarked some of the institution as a public financial institution, and it is earmarked because these particular people are being asked to raise the fund for the industry or specific segment of the industry, and then to facilitate this particular industry or fund this particular industry. Now, if you have seen the Companies Act 1956, then in that case you will find there was a specific provision which was I think 4A, which defined the public financial institution, but now under the present act, this Companies Act 2013, this particular public financial definition has institution definition has been taken away. Nevertheless, the public financial institutions are designated where they can make an investment, and which are the instrument they can make an investment, and which are the organization they can make an investment. So, this is another source where you want to address your growth, but please do remember these particular public financial institutions are generally not financed at the beginning of the startup. So, they basically come maybe while there is a growth is already started, or somewhere there is a prospect, or you have already built up your balance sheet. At that particular point of time, this public financial institution come and finance. Now, there is a institutional investors, and you have seen that I have put it as a domestic as well as foreign. Now, institutional investors, which I am going to talk little later more detail, are those people who are basically manage the different kind of fund. Like it might be the insurance fund, it might be the mutuals, it might be the pension, or it might be some other kind of fund which is created for a specific purposes. That means, to put it in other way around, these particular institutions are basically borrow the money from the people, or they basically issue the different kind of financial instrument or financial product to the people, and then they whatever the money they raise out of that, they basically make an investment in a different portfolio. So, one of the portfolio might be a portfolio relating to the growth fund or maybe the startup. So, but please remember, this particular financial institution again do not make an investment if you are at the beginning of the startup. They do make an investment once you make your balance sheet and reputation in the market regarding your startup. So, these financial institutions are domestic as well as foreign in nature, and if you wanted to access the foreign financial institution relating to your startup, there is a lot of regulation you will be subjected to. It is prescribed by the RBI as well as the SEBI, and you need to follow this particular regulation for accessing this type of fund. Now, the next one is a private placement, and I believe I have referred with you what this particular word private placement before when I was talking with you in the different contexts. Now, private placement are those situations wherein you can raise the money by issuing the different kind of security from the defined group of people. Now, at present you will find the private placement is defined under the Companies Act 2013, and therein they said that private placement means it is a closed group of people. Now, this closed group of people may be your own clientage, or maybe your clients, or maybe your own consumer or the customer, whatever it may. I mean, it is basically addressing not a public, but a closed group of people. And there is some kind of organization only allowed to issue the instrument through this particular private placement. So, at present you will find it can be done by the private limited company as well as the public limited company, both listed as well as unlisted. Now, the last one is a primary market. Primary market means where you can issue the different kind of instrument. Now, that particular instrument will be, it may be of a capital nature, that instrument might be of a debt nature, and I am going to deal this particular thing in detail later on when I am going to talk with you relating to type of instrument you can use for raising this particular fund. And this is quite a stringent process, because the moment you want to access the primary market, you are subjected to lot of regulations, and these particular regulations generally come from the capital market. And if you are a capital market regulator, and you need to follow all those particular regulation which has been prescribed by the capital market regulator. Please remember, this accessing the primary market generally happen in much later stage of a startup, like when you have possibly build up your reserves, you have possibly build up your own capital, you have done your business very nicely and you want to expand further. At that particular point of time, you generally go for the primary market, either in form of an initial public offer or in form of a follow-up public offer. Now, let us look into the table. Now, if you look into this left hand side, then you will find I have talked about the business form. And if you look into the proprietorship basically have a limitation to accessing the fund, and they can only access the fund from its own member, that means the promoter, or the government grants, or maybe the bank and specialized financial institutions. Generally, it is only the bank, not even the specialized financial institutions. Now, next one is partnership. Partnership also have a similar capacity. It cannot go for any other form of raising the fund. If it is a limited liability partnership, again they have a similar kind of capacity. If you go for the cooperatives, you will again find that they have a similar kind of a capacity, as well as the society are also the similar kind of a capacity. That means in all these particular 5 business form, you can only either raise the capital from its own member, or the promoter, or the sponsor, or you can go to the government for the different grant which I have explained to you, or you can go to the public bank or public financial institutions to raise this particular money. Now, when you are raising the money from the government, these are basically bipartite agreement. That means you enter into a contract with the government, and you promise that in which point of time, if it is not in form of a one time grant, after what time you are going to pay back that particular money, or is there any clause relating to the rescheduling of those particular loan or the investment, or if the government is investing in your equity or the capital, then in that case how the government will exit after some point of time. So, all this thing has to be included within the bipartite contract which you or agreement which you are going to enter with the government. Now, in case of the bank, again it is governed by the bipartite agreement or the loan agreement or investment agreement, whatever it is, and there you detail out that what kind of financial returns you require to give, either in form of a dividend or in form of interest. Many of the time you will find the dividend payment is depend on in the company's performance. If the company perform, then only you make a payment, but if it is come as a credit, then you need to pay a fixed rate of interest, or you might have a provision relating to rescheduling of the interest whenever it is required to do that. Now, in case of the 1% company, you will find it is almost same as the last business form we have discussed, because if you remember, initially I have told that these are basically for a very tiny business set of business organization, and that is the reason they have also restriction relating to accessing the different fund. So, in case of the 1% company also, it is corporatized, but it is more like a proprietorship, and that is the reason you will find there is a restriction for this particular company to go and raise the fund. Now, if you look into the list of a private limited company, then you will find that number is increasing now, that which are the fund they can access, and in that in this particular list you will find they can raise the fund from their own promoter or the members, they can raise it from the government, they can go to the private equity or venture capital, they can go to the bank or specialized financial institution, and they can go for a private placement. So, number of options in case of a private limited company is more than other form of a business organization, and I have explained to you all those particular thing. Now, the public limited company, you will find it is even larger than a private limited company, and they can even go for accessing the international institutional investment, either domestic or the foreign. So, even they can go for issuing a depository receipt, which I am going to talk with you a little later. That means they can go to overseas market to raise the fund, right. But I think now there is some kind of restriction has been provided. Possibly you need to have a domestic listing before you go for this area in the other country, but otherwise these people even can go to the institutional fund to raise for them. Now, the most efficient organization for raising the fund is a public listed company, and you will find I have ticked all the column, and they can go they can go and raise any kind of fund which is suitable for them. And please remember, people always think that which fund is a cheaper, which fund is easy to access, and which fund can be returned quickly. So this is also one of the consideration which you need to make while you are growing in your startup. And even as this particular company has a flexibility for accessing the different kind of fund, they are also subjected to the high compliance, and this particular compliance might come from a multi-regulator in the market where they are operating. Either it might come from a capital market regulator like SEBI, or maybe money market regulator, or it might come from any other sectoral regulators. And for that matter, even these particular people can go and access even different government security, also government fund also. And so this particular public listed company is a more efficient form of business to access the fund. Now the last one is a trust, and in case of the trust, you will find that they have also a limitation as other form of the organization, because in case of the trust, it is a sponsor who create the corpus, and that particular corpus is actually administered for benefit of the beneficiaries. So in case of a trust, is basically again benefiting those people who are becoming the beneficiaries or becoming the member of that particular trust itself. So they have also a limited capacity, but you will find in some of the sector, if you wanted to operate, then government prescribe that you should form it as a trust, so that it is not a profit making business organization, but it is acting for a benefit of that particular sector, or for those people who are going to be in touch with that particular sector itself. So these are the all matter relating to who can access what kind of a fund. And in the subsequent lectures, I am going to discuss with you that in detail relating to the venture capital, relating to the public financial institutions, and how to access the primary market. Thank you.